I love removing language barriers. This was my mission in life. I created Targum to do this. When all of this started, there was not a lot of videos coming out. So I was just sitting here and helping folks translate, and this is how I connected to Sanghyun. But now there's a bunch of videos coming out, and there's a bunch of translations that needed. AI translation is great. It's still not perfect. There's a lot of little things and euphemisms and different scientific stuff, and Sanghyun and his team has been great at like pinpointing those as well. And I think even um, Sanghyun, the one thing that I kind of always come back to is that there's a process, and we're going to talk about this maybe at length. There's something with a quartz tube that cracked that let some oxygen in to potentially led to this breakthrough. And I remember that this was a translation thing. None of the other papers had it. Only the Korean paper had it. Um, you remember that? You talked about this a little bit. And I don't know if the importance of this, but please talk about this a little bit as well.
Uh, well, what I need to say?
I'll just, you know what? I'll just put a tweet up of the summary of this because I think we already talked about this. I just want to introduce, sorry, so I'll introduce Eli and then Iri as well. So, Eli, feel free to introduce yourself. I'll just say briefly that without you, the space is likely would have been way less scientific. When, actual people who do science, unlike me, come up, it's really great to have you talk about with them as well. So, I thank you for co-hosting and coming up and being here. And feel free to introduce yourself, whatever you want to say, and then we'll move on.
Well, sure. So the first thing I should say is that I am not an expert in solid state physics, although I've worked in fields that are like kind adjacent, like surface science and quantum chemistry or computational chemistry. There were a bunch of papers that or preprints that came out on density functional theory analyses, and I've done plenty of density functional calculations, though not on band structures, but on related things, nanostructures and molecules, to be specific. So and laboratory experience in scanning tunneling microscopy and related things. So not a subject matter expert, but lots of related background knowledge. And
And a great
also,
idea, great. Let me just interject. Sorry, great ability to kind of dumb down things enough so that I understand them when people way smarter than me speak.
well, thanks. I never know how good a job I do of that. Um, Also, this is I was looking at a different nanomaterial in terms of superconductivity in 2019 and 2020, and actually, like within the last week, I revisited. To see if any new papers had been published about that, and it turns out that I'd missed one that that had been published at the time, and it shows the structures that I was getting in my calculations, even though like other groups had been talking about a different structure. So I'm going to be revisiting that as well because I kind of put that aside, thinking my calculations must be garbage. The other thing, just taking a step back and talking about the history of science, when you have a breakthrough like this, it can shake out other things that might have been put aside or run aground, or people just had to move on to other things. So we will gain knowledge, and this will probably ignite. Other things in superconductivity research.
Yep, and I will say that I think we have Kwan to thank for a lot of this because the open sourcing of the paper probably led to so many discussions in the open about specifically LK99, but also, just the science around it, how to replicate peer review process, good or bad, all of this. And if we are effectively watching something like this get discovered, uh, there was there was a denial from this team from Q Center, the folks who released LK99. I think they tried to ask for getting published and got denied or something like that, right? And then they had to publish in Korean. And so, and now every lab in the world with free, phosphorus, red phosphorus and lead and copper trying to replicate this material. So definitely.
Well, not just trying, but there are credible reports of successes.
Yes, we'll
And in
get
this
there.
space of time, it's remarkable.
But I think,
but
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so I just wanted to say, there's like some bad blood between the Quantum Energy Research Center and the, if I'm remembering correctly, it's the Korean Ceramics and Superconductor Society, or perhaps Theo, you can correct me on that. But the chair posted like a really derisive and insulting tweet to the notion that these unknown people could possibly have discovered a room temperature superconductor, and ended it with Bwahahaha. So now he's nicknamed Dr. Bwahahaha. And it's quite reasonable for the Quantum Energy Research Center group to be reluctant to let them be the ones to verify that, but instead, both go to others for independent verification, and excuse me, and
I thought you had sound effects. I actually liked it. I need to get sound effects.
well, that's a phone ringing. Decline that, and also ask them, what would their proposed verification be for, process be for whenever they do decide to let them verify it.
So the society's name is Korean Society of Superconductivity and Cryogenics, hence the acronym KSSC, and it used to be the Korean Society of Superconductivity and Korean Society of Cryogenics separately, and then they merged sometimes in the past. And even looking at the name, you can guess that, I mean, if you have a room temperature superconductor, you don't need cryogenics, don't you? So just from the name, you can guess that they could be hostile to the idea. Like the society is about getting superconductivity through cryogenics, and someone came that you don't need any cryogenics. And so what happened is, okay, so I need to prepare my English sentence so someone else
Okay,
speak.
okay. So folks, I want to just say hi to Erie as well. You're able to speak now? Irie?
I hope. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and loud and clear.
That's good. They installed it on desktop because I'm not on my phone.
This works on desktop? Whoa.
Apparently.
Okay.
I seem to
I'm
be
moving to the better mic after this. Next
I
case,
think
folks.
I'm auto muting or something though, but I'm not sure what's going on.
All right. So just a quick aside, not related to LK99 at all. I do spaces a lot, and I'm using like the AirPod mics and not like an actual studio production. And now, if this is on spaces, folks, get ready for way better microphone quality. Erie, welcome to the space. This is your first time. You've been part of the group, and folks have been following you. Wikipedia has been copying you. Can you talk about your last week just briefly and introduce yourself?
Geez, I don't even know if I belong here. That's one way to introduce myself. So there's this old 2000s era. There's this old 2000s era style internet forum called Space Battles, which is full of sci-fi nerds, and I follow it. And they've been following this whole development themselves, and they've been compiling information on their end. And I suppose at some point I just thought, well, why don't I compile some of that information and sum it up for myself personally? Just put it up there. I didn't think anyone was using the LK99 hashtag here on Twitter. And so I just stuck it up here, and then I somehow became a bridge from the old internet to the new internet. Since that happened on a Monday, I more or less just missed everything because of work in my time zone. And that's kind of it, I suppose, unless you have questions. I am not a subject matter expert at all.
So I do think you belong, and this is why I called you here. And the reason why I think you belong specifically is because you started following this information closely, collecting it, and also sourcing it. And so for folks who want to follow the replication attempt, and it's not real time. You have to you have a day job like Sanghyun has a day job, like many folks have a day job also to do in addition to this. And I will call out Andrew McCallum, the guy, the space pirate who also had a day job and also like replicated. And folks are welcome to follow Erie's website where like there's a lot of replication sources. Many of them, Wikipedia try to copy and not to a very great extent, but way before Wikipedia. And so I think definitely you belong up here just because I also don't belong here. I also started like this exactly. I just collected a list of Twitter folks. I posted it. Many people started liking this. And then I found Eli and Sanghyun and then kind of started learning to this Twitter list. And yeah, here we are in helping the world understand what the hell is going on. So welcome, Iri. Welcome. I think it's good to get started with just a brief intro of what we're talking about, and I'll start, and Eli, feel free to chime in and like interject. I'll do a brief one. What July 20? Go ahead, Sangyan.
Yeah, so I want to briefly talk about the Korean verification committee thing, and so Hyun-Tak Kim interviewed about the verification, and his words are very spicy. Like it's like the verification committee should not terrorize the poor business people like gangsters while they are on debt and in a hard business situation. And he also said that if they want a sample, they should send the meeting minutes so far and the comprehensive plan of verification. Like just to give us a sample is a ridiculous thing. So that's the interview Hyun-Tak Kim did.
And I just want to maybe roll it back a little bit, Sanghyun, before we get to. I just want to tell people who Hyun-Tak Kim is, and like who are the folks who we're talking about, briefly, and then we're gonna get into the discussions. Around July 23, or I think July 22 or 23, a paper was uploaded out of the blue to this website called Archive. The paper was talking about superconductors in room temperature and ambient pressure, which is to many kind of the holy grail of material sciences. It's this incredible finding. And many folks in the science community scoffed at it, not even seen this, I think, because many attempts at doing this were already happening, and there was like a recent retraction as well in Science magazine. And so people are, especially in the science community, when they see something like this, it's not verified, it's not replicated, it's not peer reviewed, they tend to like raise their eyebrow. Especially when the process is messy, and this process was messy because 2 hours after the first paper, another paper was uploaded, and this other paper has way more authors, and the only two authors that shared on both papers are Lee and Kim. So LK99, Lee and Kim, and they're working on a material they quote unquote invented in 99 or found in 99. It goes deeper than this, and for depth, I recommend looking at the pin tweet, and we'll try to pin as many tweets as possible, folks, up on stage. But if you scroll up to the top of your space, there's a pin tweet from Sanghyun. There's a few of them with an in-depth kind of analysis as to how this group came to be and how they found what they found. So we're watching these two papers release, and then the internet goes kind of crazy with several, at least for me, it started on Twitter, with several viral kind of explanations of what's happening, and the fact that if this is as big as they claim it is, a lot changes. I think we had Andrew Undercott, I forget his last name all the time. Up here, he also works at Superconductors. He had a tweet on the impact of room temperature superconductors like 3 weeks before this news broke. And he recently said superconductors only affect industries that has electricity in them. It's a jokey tweet, of course, because the implication there is like everything changes. A lot of things having electricity in them. Like Eli said, a lot of science that kind of accepted the fact that we're restricted in electricity transmission, that like electricity gets lost to heat. A lot of things change. Okay, so it's a huge claim, and everybody is waiting for it to get verified. And these essentially messy release made many people kind of scoff at this. However, the internet picked it up, like internet picks up everything. The information stream enlarged, helped by hopefully us and Erie and Sanhyun. And we started to see replication attempts, because if the claims are as big, the additional incredible thing about the paper is the 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 process is not very complex and it's fairly quick. And so the world could obviously see with quickness whether or not this replicates. And this is what we've seen for this week. And we're going to talk about replication attempts. And again, helped by Erie's kind of addition. But I just want to call out kind of the first one, and this is in the title of the space. Andrew McCallum from Varda Space. If you didn't see yet, and I assume you did if you're here, but if you didn't see yet, after a while, Andrew started with Meissner effect or bust hashtag, and started at the back of Varda Space, just cooking LK99. And yesterday I posted a video with a few samples kind of gravitating. Eli, I think, could you do like a brief explanation of Meissner effect, and why we're watching for Meissner effect, and why why everybody wants to see the rock float, and why it's not necessarily the thing that we like have to look for?
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's a little bit unexpected because of the properties of LK99, or what we think will be the properties of LK99, but it might not be exactly the Meissner effect. We shall see. But okay, so if you think about a medium in which conductors can just flow without any resistance at all, right? They're going to be moving around just with thermal energy in an ordinary isotropic material, just in any direction under thermal energy. But then you apply a magnetic field, and they will respond, according to their velocity perpendicular to that field. Now, because it's a superconductor and there's no resistance, there's no energy loss, you would get internal currents that wind up precisely canceling out that field, which means that the field doesn't penetrate, but instead it winds up going around. But one of the ways that it can, quote, go around is by like trying to expel the superconductor from the field, and that balances against any other forces, such as gravity. Okay, so that's the ordinary type 2 superconductor. I won't get into the differences between type 2 and type 1, but LK91 is probably going to turn out to be a little bit different, because it looks like the superconductivity is in one-dimensional quantum wells that are in the crystal structure of apatite. And part of the difficulty is we still don't know anything at all about the microscopic structure or morphology of these domains. Given the way this is made, they're probably just like, you think of grains that are just kind of melted together, but they're grain boundaries, and within each grain they can be oriented differently. And that's, also there may be grains that are the right phase that superconducts, and then other phases of the solid solution that aren't quite right and don't superconduct and are just insulators. That's another level of complexity. And you even saw this in the very first 3-author preprint that was where they mentioned that we think that some of the non-ideality of this as a superconductor are due to grain boundaries, and that's highly believable. I mean, especially, these are such early days. Even though the material was first discovered in 1999, it wasn't looked at again for a long, long time. And it's like this is like the first month in 1996 after the first quote high temperature superconductors were discovered, and it took a while for things to get sorted out and refined.
So
So
it's like that. Besides, it's like multiplied by the insanity of social media and open research
yeah.
and no language barriers and immediate communication, all of the things that happened since then. But the insanity is like similar. Please continue.
The thing is, in the original video that was posted by the Quirk group, they said levitation, but you see that it's kind of like leaning down on one side. And since then, we've seen other replication results where they do show a magnetic torque at room temperature. In the case of the Hust replication or the Southeast University replication, theirs only worked at 110 Kelvin. But that's easily explained by just they had fewer of the one-dimensional superconducting domains or grains of the right phase, so to speak. And I should step back and say that the methods that this is made by, the first method and then also Iris's method, it's remarkably simple and also remarkably crude, and it wouldn't be surprising if you get a real mess out of that. And so by mess I mean only a fraction of your results or of your product is the actual superconducting domain. And there are other things from Kim's LinkedIn that suggest the same thing. And also there's nothing to orient the material together, so you're getting random orientations until you like grind it up so that you're getting isolated domains, perhaps, right?
Go ahead, Sanghan.
Okay. So now if you look at the above the space, there are 4 tweets pinned, including links to the 3 write-ups that our Korean group did. The first one is called on LK99 papers that explained the general background and what the 3 papers say. That's very interesting because all 3 papers say quite different things. And the next write-up is about, so what the heck has happened with LK99 really? It's about, so there are some, okay, just to read the thing. It explained why things are this muddy as hell and why everybody is confused. And the third write-up is very recently, there is in Korea, there is a popular science YouTuber called Seed that created the channel 6 months ago. And this channel mostly reports on things like how to use ChatGPT best and about what is this new pill called Wegovy that everyone wants to use for diet or something like that. And I don't know how they got a very long and informative interview of the Hyun-tak Kim, who is the third author of the more detailed paper uploaded to archive. And this is like the most important interview and video released on the LK99 so far period. So we very hurriedly did the full transcript and translation in the best way possible. And we released it just before this space started, like I finished like 5 minutes ago, and please have a look.
So
That's
I
all.
will just add that I tried to translate this video with Targum, the service that I've built, and I also tried to see auto translations of Hyun Tak Kim in YouTube, and for some reason this guy is untranslatable by AI, and so I wanna I wanna definitely recommend by the weirdness of all of this. However, Sanghyun, I agree. The questions they've asked were very impressive, and the answers he gave obviously went up, above my head. But the one thing that I took from this, and that, like with certainty, is that he said basically this: this is superconductivity. It cannot be explained in any other way. Now, I just want to pause and say, I have somebody commented, like, will we talk about the whole history of the whole thing in every space? And I don't think so. I think at some point we'll find a way to kind of bring folks up to speed. However, it's important to know that like many new folks were just discovering this from the feed, from the excitement, from Andrew's replication attempts, etc. They could cast doubt. And I think the scientific community did cast doubt on Q Center for research because Lee and Kim are not cited, I think, anywhere. And this was a fairly obscure group sitting in a basement in Korea with not a lot of stuff. And the one person who works there who is cited a lot, who's like a respectable scientist, is this person, Hyun Tak Kim, who they brought on, I want to say last year, Sanghyun, is that correct? He's new to the team. And
What?
Hyun Tak Kim is fairly new to the team in Q Center. It's like last year or something.
We were not really clear about that question for a long time, and our group's one of the highest priority questions that our group investigated was the question when exactly Hyun-Tak Kim joined the team and how and why. And while we were researching, our question was simply answered by the YouTube interview. And we now know exactly how. So the Korean paper was published in April, and the corresponding author of that Korean paper is Woo Geun-ho, and Woo Geun-ho. Let me check again. Yes. So what happened is Hyun-Tak Kim had worked on metal insulator transition for a long time, and he was looking for the next topic of research. And from when he was in an undergraduate school, so when Hyun-Tak Kim was in the university, Nobel Prize winner Leon Cooper came and did a lecture on the superconductivity, and he was so impressed that he made Cooper as his role model. And one day I will research superconductivity, and I shall study physics in earnest. And after he was established, he decided that he need to research superconductivity again. So like he studied things for like 3 and 4 years, and in 2021 he came up with this theory and tried to publish it, but nobody would accept it. So he sent it to the scientific reports, which has a very low reputation because it is a public knowledge that that journal never rejects any paper submitted. So so what happened is that Q Center Group was working on a paper, that Korean paper that got published in April, and that corresponding author of the group, Oh Geun-ho, was looking for a literature search to maybe to do the citation in their paper, like the scientific paper is supposed to cite the previous work they were inspired by. And then they found the paper by Hyun-Tak Kim in the scientific reports, and they were so impressed by it, they contacted Hyun-Tak Kim out of blue. Like Hyun-Tak Kim is a public employee at the E3. E3 is let me E3 is an acronym for Electronics and Telecommunication Research Institute, like the AT&T Bell Labs in the United States. And this lab is very reputable, like they did the first to third generation service in the South Korea. They were instrumental in that, and they hold the really large patents on the mobile communication technology. And therefore, this research institute has a material science division, and Hyun-Tak Kim is an employee of it. And since this is a public institution, they have a phone book on the homepage. And the organ who contacted Hyun-Tak Kim by simply calling on the smartphone out of blue from the phone number listed on the public website, and that's how they worked together.
So
it's all in the interview.
The interviews, I think I saw 2 interviews, maybe there's more now. I think, first of all, folks in the audience, just so you understand how deep the research goes in Sanghyun and team, this is, this is verified and over-verified. And I want to also highlight the importance of why we're stressing Hyun-Tak's scheme credibility. This is not like an out-of-the-blue random person. This is when Hyun-Tak Kim says, "Hey, this is hard to explain by anything other than superconductivity." He has H score of 43, which in scientist terms, basically his papers were cited, at least 40 of them, 40 times each. So there's some debate whether or not H score is we should over-index on the H score. However, we highlight the importance of Hyun-Tak Kim. It's not like just some random dude who said, this is magic floating rocks." This is a person who worked on theories of superconductivity, then got brought into the Q Center, and now he's the public face, essentially, right? Seo, Sanghyun, I don't think I saw Lee or Kim in interviews in video. Only Hyun-Tak Kim is the person that authored the second paper and is now kind of the public face of we have what we say we have.
No, actually,
Okay. Tell us more.
Actually, Seok-bae Lee is the leader of the group. Like all the papers, first author is Lee, and Lee interviewed a couple of times in Korean media. But like Hyun-Tak Kim is very good at English, and he is a quite famous researcher, so he knows how to deal with the journalists and the public media, and he is quite skillful at that, like how he handled the conflict with the Korean Society of Superconductivity and Cryogenics. So this is my suspicion, but maybe the group decided that it is best for Hyun-Tak Kim to handle the all outside public communication.
Yeah, and so we see him a lot, and he's standing by this. And maybe the last point I want to say here, and Eli, feel free to chime in, is that scientists like this don't this is their make it or break it reputation, right? Like if he says this is what they claim it says, especially with this level of importance to the world, and essentially it's like faked or fabricated, like we've seen, this is like his reputation is basically gone. However, they still stand by this, and we see replication attempts, which we're going to talk about next.
Well, okay, so his reputation, his reputation is important. Scientists actually would rather find out if they're wrong than just assert that they're right. We try to be really careful to not over represent the power of our results or have conclusions that are not well supported by our results, because your reputation is important. It's okay to be wrong. It's not okay to engage in fraud, I think is an important line to understand. But the thing about science is you do your best to make your work replicatable by others, so that nobody has to take your word for it, so that nobody has to rely on your reputation or your lack of reputation if they see enough there to want to try to reproduce your results. And the team at Quirk has been reaching out to people. There have been some issues and things that didn't maybe look the greatest, but they are engaging with other people to replicate their results. And we don't have any direct information, but it's implied that they've already shared samples with third parties for independent verification. But also by now, we have multiple replication efforts around the world that have had different ways of success. Two of them who are part of our green room have had what appears to be pretty good levels of success, at least in terms of showing the not precisely levitation but torque, and I'll get into the difference at some point between those two things. But you wouldn't expect to see that if something unusual weren't going on, if you were following the protocols in the original papers or anything that reasonably corresponds to them.
Will we have Andrew McCulloch here this time?
I invited Andrew, and Andrew, if you're in the audience, feel free to come up. Andrew has publicly stated that after the thing, something before we continue, Andrew McCallum and the Varda team kind of space yesterday was replicating. They had like high quality cameras in there. I think Josh, I forgot his name, who's like a YouTuber. He's going to give like maybe tomorrow a full breakdown of what they saw, which is gonna be great, and follow that for sure. But yeah, no, Andrew is not here for now.
Just want to quickly mention a little thing. After he got it, he said, "Okay, so I've got the 4 gigabyte video. I don't have a machine that I can edit it on here." And like I'm all, well, you could do the boneheaded thing of taking a cell phone video of the video.
This is why Andrew is the space cowboy. This is kind of how he got started with this, just grabbing, whatever materials and gunning through this. And I am going back always, and Eli, thank you, and Sankan, just feel free to chime in. I'm going back to the credibility of the offers, to the fact that the papers were messy, to highlight this point. They are standing by this. The person who's telling us that they're standing by this, he's not, he knows what he's talking about. He knows the difference between diamagnetism, regular diamagnetism, and superconductivity. He has the theories, and we saw some replication attempts already happen. And Andrew McAlp is one. Iris Alexandra, the Russian quote-unquote cat girl, is another. And a lot of doubt was thrown towards that thread as well. And we stand by Iris with 100%. And
yeah, she knows her stuff.
Yeah, Iris knows her stuff, and I think even Wikipedia followed up. And at some point, there was like a bullshit statement that like Wikipedia doesn't want to add the Russian cat girl from the internet, and now that she's affiliated with the research institute, she's on there as well. And Erie, I feel you have a comment on this as well.
Not a ton to say, but I think there's something going on with people obsessing over the article and an inconsistent, reliable source policy at the moment. Like, I used to edit Wikipedia quite often in the late 2000s, and I'm quite vigorous in my source checking. And I was quite surprised when they seemed to copy my table at first, because I definitely don't consider myself a good source with everything going on at the moment. It's just the nature of the internet.
Yeah, makes sense. Go ahead, Sanghan.
So I want to talk about how I see the whole thing. And from the various interview and statements released from the group and the papers themselves, it is very clear that the group believes their claims. But the important thing is that it's very different from whether they are right or wrong. But at this point, it got replicated multiple times. Like there is an original group in South Korea, and the very first replication in the world was done in Russia, And then there were multiple successes in China, and we also got a success from the United States. And there is a claim from Germany they succeeded that I can't really evaluate yet. I think it might be a fake. So even if the Germany claim is a fake, we have like 5 or 6 replications so far. So I think the phenomena of the so what happens, like it does the partial levitation and things like that are confirmed beyond any doubt so far. But that does not mean it is the superconductor. And I mean, the thing is very unclear how we would test for the superconductivity and whether it is a superconductor. So, and I mean, you could measure the electrical resistance, and I think the Andrew McCullough's sample is going to the lab for measurement as we speak. And I heard from the Iris Alexandra that her sample went to the Moscow Engineering and Physics Institute, and they got the shot from the particle accelerator beamline. And it is also reported from the South Korean media that the sample is in the Korean Energy University, that is the subsidiary of the Korean Electricity and Power Company, that is the transmission and distribution of electricity, the monopoly company in South Korea, and they are doing the investigating this interesting material with the electron microscope. So we will know sometimes in the future. There are actual samples around the world, and there are expensive instruments looking at them. Okay, I need to prepare what I would talk in
For sure.
English.
So, adding to this, if folks look on top of the space, National Taiwan University is also currently in the final stage of their superconductor attempt, replicating attempt, and they're live streaming, I think, on Twitch or on YouTube. And so we see, and I will talk maybe a little bit about this as well. We see kind of gung ho Twitter folks like Andrew and Iris. Uh, doing this on the back of their after their day job, and we also see a lot of national huge laboratories and the host institute in China and Southeast in China, and now we look at Taiwan University. It looks like everybody's now stumped, and some of the claims make sense, right? Like these are this is the process to make this material. It's lead and copper and some other stuff, and it has very, very interesting properties. But the promise, this is I think what people want to know most of all. And Eli, also feel free to chime in. The promise of like the holy grail, the superconductor material at room temperature that we can start using for in in pretty much everywhere we use electricity, that is still yet to be clear whether or not this is coming. Correct? Is this a fair summary, Eli?
Yeah, and I'll mention that depending on the quality of the samples, it could be a genuine superconductor, but it could still be difficult to get good measurements until you get good quality samples. And we haven't seen any microscopic images so far, to my knowledge. I actually suggested a type of analysis that Iris Alexander was really excited to hear, because she knew somebody who's able to do that. And that doesn't take terribly long. So those results might actually see the light of day before the results. The measurements that she was working on and are still underway, right? And I think that's going to be the story from a lot of places, because different teams have different instruments, different expertise, and it's a matter of having the right combination of things come together. the other thing that I wanted to mention is what's unique about Iris's approach, and this is probably why she had the first replication, because it takes a certain amount of time even once you have all of the materials, and she figured out, as I kind of thought, that the original two preprints from Quirk were some kind of curious choices in terms of the reactants, and I'm not knocking them at all because there's probably some history that led them to that, and it's reasonable to stick with what you have working. But approaching it de novo, she tried some different materials that do make sense, and just improvised it. And in her reaction, that avoids some of the time-consuming steps. So she was able to produce it more quickly, is what I'm getting at.
I want to also say there's a turning point. Sanya, just 1 second, please. I want to also say that there's an important point to make here, where Iris started as an obscure account with like 300 followers and started like saying, "Hey, I'm doing this in my Russian kitchen," and this like led a lot of people to chuckle. Now she's affiliated and all of this time she was affiliated with the Greg Institute, I think, and now she's working with the Moscow Institute. But there's a lab there attached to this, and her process was non-standard, but was definitely the quickest because of some non-traditional approaches. And Iris texted, I think, all of us a picture that she's discussing some of these findings with Pokrovsky. I think Pokrovsky is, let me find, Sergei Pokrovsky. Sergei Pokrovsky is the author of anisotropic gap equations in superconductivity theory, and there's like extreme interest of different scientists that like people talk with, both from that angle and different other angles. I'm sure Andrew McCallum is getting like a lot of interest now. I've even seen Elon Musk reply to one of these, but like I'm sure that like Labs is talking to them as well. And the guy, the Sergei Pokrovsky guy, the guy with like articles about superconductivity, he's also stumped a little bit. He's like, I'm not really sure how like superconductivity is like formed in some of these connections, and he's like, there's a lot of questions to be asked. And one thing he said, like Landau, it's better to just do and then test versus like simulate and try to figure this out, which I think is
develop theories in absence of measurements, right? Because ultimately you can have really beautiful theories, but they just don't explain the measurements, and the measurement, reality, nature takes precedence over theories that have not yet gained empirical support. But so maybe this is a good
Eli,
time
just
to
one
talk
second.
about.
I want to get to Sanghan. I think you want to start something. I interrupted, so I just want to make sure that he gets his place. Sanghan, you want to comment?
Okay. Yeah. So you were talking about alternative synthesis process that was used by Iris Alexandra and how it compares to Q-Center. And I think you were quite unfair to Q-Center, so I want to correct. Like my guess is that this is not confirmed, but Q-Center's process is probably higher yield and higher purity than the process used by Iris. Iris was in a hurry, like so why she did this on the weekend is that they were talking about the new superconducting material called LK99 between friends, like we all did, and her friend did dare that whether she could synthesize the material until the weekend is done. And there was a bet about it. So the reward was that if she succeeded, her friend would buy a beef steak to Iris. And so she was in hurry, like she couldn't wait for 48 hours in for baking in furnace as it is done in the paper. So she did an alternative synthesis route that is literally 100 times faster. But that doesn't necessarily mean that synthesis is better or superior to the one developed by Q-Center. Actually, I suspect that Q-Center is like many steps, like 10 or more steps ahead of the every other group currently trying to replicate. Like and but Iris's process was very fast, and she succeeded, and her friend verified that it is indeed floating, and her friend bought on beef steak to Iris, and they took a picture and uploaded to the Twitter in a victory dance.
That's great commentary.
Yeah,
And
I
Floats, 1 second, Floats, I'll get to you in a second. I just want to say, I really want to know what Andrew is celebrating with, because Andrew is also deserving a celebration tonight, because Andrew also started like doing this kind of gung-ho and then kind of learned on the way. And yesterday, when the video they posted, when Andrew posted the video, he's like, hey, I had to cut a lot of screams of excitement with many people going with a magnet on top of some samples and trying to see kind of the rocks kind of jump, and everybody's like, "Hey, Andrew, just post it with the screens." And so I hope Andrew is celebrating with something like this steak tonight that will go down in history. Folks, I want to introduce Floats, 0x Floats. I've been following since the beginning of this, added to my list, and has been consistently bringing the latest kind of developments and news. Floats, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself and then chime in.
yeah.
So I am very sorry, but Alex again pinned the Iris's initial thread on the space, but I have a warning. There seems to be some glitch in Twitter that if you start there, you pretty much cannot follow the
지난
entire
화요일
thread
정도로.
because Twitter cuts the thread in various places. So the best way to read that thread is starting from the actual conclusion, that is the photograph of the levitating rock, and then scroll upward and read backward. Otherwise, I mean, you practically cannot follow the thread from the first post.
Thanks, Sanghan.
Thanks for that. All right, so I want to talk about the yield thing, because it definitely does seem as though the Q Center people have something going on with the yield. That seems pretty promising, because there was a paper that came out on Monday which sort of suggested the yield was probabilistic and sort of random in nature. To recap, this paper was saying that the method by which the superconductivity is generated is pretty simple. You have the copper atom replacing the lead atom. Most of the time it gets replaced into configuration in which it doesn't work. You get some inert piece of rock. But a very small percentage of the time you get a piece of superconductivity. It seems to me that this was completely random. And this is why you have these microscopic specks sort of appearing all over the place. But the Q Center, their samples are like, they have big old samples, especially the one that came out in the New York Times about like 2 days ago. They're pretty big. So, I mean, that would suggest they do have a way to probably either increase the percentage of superconductivity, in their sample, or they have something going on. So that does seem a little promising.
Yeah, and I think
just
yeah, go ahead.
quick mention. There are once you synthesize something, there are probably going to be ways to enrich the superconducting phases, grind it up and get particles, and find a way to enrich. And it's there's a chance that it's the same synthesis in the paper, and they've just found a purification or enrichment method. We don't know yet. There's a lot that we don't know.
Yeah, there was another thing I wanted to talk about, because if you guys take a look at the new interview that came out today or 2 days ago, where Hyun-Tak Kim, he's explaining why their sample doesn't stand up, and the way he explains it, it did seem different than the mechanism that was proposed on Monday. He was saying inside the sample, so the sample, imagine the sample, right? It's like this 3D object. He's saying inside the 3D object, there's like a one-dimensional line of conductivity, like inside the sample, just like a line. This is why it doesn't stand up. This does seem different than the completely sort of random thing that was proposed earlier on Monday. So it does seem that this conflicted. He also said, well, this also makes me, the Iris thing, I'm not sure if she produced a levitating sample, because Hyun-Tak Kim was sort of saying that it was impossible to create a fully levitating sample. The one-dimensional superconductivity was somehow preventing full levitation. So that's a little bit curious. I want to see what you guys think of that.
So this goes to the difference between isotropic and anisotropic material. So isotropic means the same in all directions, anisotropic means not the same in all directions. Now, we believe that the density functional theory papers support this, that the columns of lead in the apatite crystal structure are superconducting channels, and microscopically they are just that, columns in a tightly packed ordered array with phosphates between them. But in the samples, it could be anything from like little grains that are like that to spaghetti, like where you have things curving around each other, and the morphology is going to have consequences for how it behaves. If it is at least somewhat anisotropic, in other words mostly aligned as opposed to just a ball of spaghetti, it is more likely that you'd get the kind of behavior that we've seen in the replication videos, where it doesn't levitate, but it torques. As you turn the field, it lines up with the field lines. And so if you think about it, if it can go between if the field can go easily between the superconducting channels, then that explains the observation that it's just minimizing the field in the superconductor by going in the aligned gaps between the superconducting channels. Now, somebody commented in one of the threads about whether you could. Well, I won't go into their thing, because I'll go into what I replied with, because I understand that better. If you could turn on an electromagnet, that might have the kind of pinning that you get in a type 2 superconductor, so that it will move in 3 dimensions with that. That's just a guess. I could easily be wrong. I'm happy either way to see the results of that test. But this is not the same as the established type 1 or type 2 superconductors in this regard, from what we've seen so far. But again, this is fragmentary and inferential, right?
And
I think
it's been a couple
the
of
next
weeks,
week
right?
is going to show us, just real quick, the next week is going to show us lots more results.
Yeah, this is what I want to highlight. It's only been a couple of weeks, and like the replication speed that we saw was fairly crazy. Sangyan, I pasted an image above, and this is from a Chinese preprint of a paper. And I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, but it definitely tries to talk about. And if you want to highlight this guy who this paper is from the Chinese media, I would love for you to kind of summarize that angle as well.
So before, Alex pinned the new tweet on the space, and before commenting on that, I want to share two pieces of information that doesn't seem to be widely known. The first is that the Q Center group actually commented on their, not exactly, but how many samples they have and their production rate and yield and things like that. The comment is that they can produce a sample that was so we know of 2 public samples. That the first one was on the first video uploaded by Hyun-Tak Kim on the SciCast, and the second sample we know of is the one in the New York Times video. And if you carefully look at 2 videos, it is very clear that 2 are different samples of the similarly large size. And so the question is, they said that to create a sample the size of the things in the 2 videos, they need 1 week. And they said that all samples are either sent or in transit, or they want to keep some samples for themselves, so they have no samples to share. Simply, they are cooking the rock. Obviously, they are cooking the rock in the basement as best as possible, but it takes 1 week for them to produce the sample we have seen.
Wait, hold on.
So they're
You
Yeah?
said they were
What?
sent. Where were they getting sent to? This is seems like it's news, right? You said we only know 2 samples. You said produced once a week.
They don't talk about it, but the implication is that there is no free sample currently.
Right, but
I mean,
but hold on. There's so we know there's 2 samples, right? The one in, as you said, the one in the original video. Then there's one in the New York Times. But then you also say they produce at a rate of 1 a week. It's been like a few weeks now, and then you said they sent the sample somewhere, right? So like, where are these other samples going?
so one place we know the sample is in the Korean Energy University that I talked about in the power company. The primary investigator in that university that said that they were working on it with the electronic microscope did an interview that and confirmed that they have a sample. Other locations of a sample are not clear. I searched I mean, we have like 10 people in our Korean Discord room, and we searched as hard as possible, and there is no mention of who got the sample. But so the conclusion is like we know about 2 samples, and at least 1 sample is in the Korean Energy University, and other samples are in appropriate places, and there are no free samples, and they need 1 week to produce 1 sample. And one other thing is that so Iris Alexandra had it's not really a rock, it's a speck. So it's a very small, like she definitely has a floating speck, and she hand carried that sample to the Moscow Engineering and Physics Institute, which is a very prestigious institution in Russia. And they did the various measurements. After that, she retook the sample and went to home because she wants to keep it. And the people from MNI, that is Moscow Engineering and Physics Institute, said that some measurements are not possible with such a small speck. So they said that it would be very much appreciated if Iris could produce a sample that is at least 5 times bigger than the current sample. So Iris' first priority is working on the bigger sample, and she seems to think she can do it. So that was whereabouts of samples and the production rate, and how many PI requested for the 5 times larger sample. That was the 2 pieces of information I wanted to share. And so there is an image of this image to explain the theory of the partial levitation. And so where this image came from is there is a Chinese Q&A site which is very big, like named Jihu. It's like an Chinese version of English website like Stack Overflow and Quora. And there had been a frenzied discussion of the LK99 and superconductivity and in Jihu. And the first and most popular question on the Jihu on the South Korean claim of superconductivity called LK99 has received 150 million page views so far. And our group is looking at the new questions and the new claims and new posts posted on Jihu, like so it is a fire hose, like there are too many things, and it is physically impossible to read them all. But we are looking for what is the most interesting information. And Jihu has a voting system, so the users upvote the most interesting posts and most interesting comments. So we are mostly scanning the top posts. And one of my friends identified someone called the CGC, we are so that is the modern Mandarin pronunciation. So we are it is hard to type, so we are calling him by the initial XZX. But the name is clearly not in Mandarin. That is a modern Chinese. It is almost certainly written in Wenyan, which is classical Chinese, and it means something like the you need to clean and wash the elixir of plant in the river of the valley, whatever that is. And his self-biography is an obscure, maybe it was written by himself. That is classical Chinese 20 letters rhymed poetry, and his affiliation is listed as higher, so institution of higher education. That is literally what is in his bio. So he is in the institution of higher education, but he won't say which one. And this user's post is like he never uses any other source, like he does not link or where he learned his stuff, but his post is universally excellent. Like this user knows something. Like it is impossible to write things like that without knowing something. And
Samkan,
everyone
can I
was
step in and just summarize for the folks the last couple of things, because I think it's very important, right? Like Iris before, like she was fairly obscure and people didn't start believing because like it's not an affiliated, but some people started looking at the science. You're saying there is a person in this Chinese social media called by XCX with like no affiliation necessarily, and that person also looks kind of like this, like banger replies, information that like is pertinent to the science, very like great, and you guys have been following him, and I think Elsa in our group is also like separately confirming that like this person is adding very information, very good information, correct? A good summary of this
yes.
person.
Yes. So XGX posted an answer to why the partial levitation, and in that post that like he is slimness because he has worked 2 days straight without sleeping, and his theory of partial levitation is in preparation, and it will be posted to archive. So I think he's in some kind of academic institution in China. And I mean, this user is clearly addicted to the social media Jihu, so he heavily apologized for why he couldn't keep answering because he is writing the paper as if answering the question on Jihu is more important public duty than writing a paper. But he couldn't help himself that present the gist of his preprint currently in writing. So in practice, we have a preprint on Jihu, and the image Alex posted is from that preprint on Jihu, showing the diagram how the partial levitation happened. I mean, I cannot summarize that post. So it is written in a hasty style compared to the paper, but I mean, you need actual scientific expertise to understand that post. I cannot
Hey, Sanhoon,
talk about it here.
this person, so this person created a sample. You're saying this person's levitated the sample, is partially levitating, and is going to create an archive preprint. This sort of implies that like, are there photos or is there videos of this guy's sample? I mean, this would be like the third or fourth.
Yeah, look at his timeline. He posted the video to YouTube. Whoever's talking is muted.
Yeah, I don't think. Go ahead, Sanghan. I think so. We have this user. He's about to preprint. Would you like to post the tweet with his preprint so people can start translating and learning from it?
Let me look for it.
Whose timeline? Whose timeline has the video? I'm looking at San Hoon's timeline for the video. I can't find it.
Yeah.
Alex, you know who
I actually have not followed whether or not this person replicated by himself or just comments, and I don't know if there's a video, but I do know there's like the preprint, and I do know that like the folks who are following his comments, the comments seem to be like not sourced by somebody else, so this person kind of floats up the algorithmic waves to the top of the comment line a lot. I actually don't know if they replicated themselves, and I don't know if like the paper is based on experimental evidence or just just looking at stuff and learning. I actually don't know. However, the image that I posted is like a first attempt that the preprint is supposed to get uploaded at some point of explaining the semi-float conductivity type thing that we see in most of the samples so far, besides very tiny specks, right? And we do see some levitation for very tiny specks. I think one of the first replication attempts, floats, you may remember from VPS Havana in India. They generated like very big rocks essentially, and then they quickly posted to the archive, "Hey, this doesn't work. Like rocks, don't levitate." And many people in the comments, to me, this was funny, right? Not a scientist, I'm following the human element of this. Back then, when Iris was still obscure, somebody commented on Facebook on an Indian kind of research group, "Hey, you should smash the rocks. Look at like Iris. That's what she suggested." And to me, it was like really funny because like unlike a peer review and archive citations, somebody in an obscure Twitter like Facebook post on an Indian Facebook comments about the Russian Twitter anon person and actually provides good information. So smashing of the rocks, it looks like Andrew, that's what he had as well. Andrew produced a sample that's like finger sized basically, and then Andrew quickly smashed it and started looking with the magnet for like the parts that do levitate, the parts that do kind of react to magnetism. And so back to this Chinese commenter, I don't know if they actually have produced a video. I don't have confirmation on that. I do know that like they are also obscure. They're also like using social media very well, and people follow and wait for their advice. And they're about to release kind of a potential explanation of why this partial semiconductivity works in like the bigger samples. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were referring to something else. So forget what I said about digging up the video. But
all right, no problem, man.
I will actually, since it's not pinned for anybody who hasn't seen it, I'll put up the link to Andrew McCallop's video.
So the Indian thing, it's pretty funny. If you take a look at their Facebook, they have produced like the biggest sample I've ever seen. They have this huge puck and like they put it on top of the magnet. Their sample is bigger than the magnet. And they're like, "Hey, why isn't it floating?" So there's a lot of people asking them to smash it. I'm not sure if they were. One thing to watch out for is they do have another sample coming out tonight. Yesterday, they produced another sample. It didn't work. They said they were going to produce another one tonight. So I think we have a total of 3 replications to look for overnight here. We have the one from Taiwan, the one from India, and I believe there's one from Eastern Europe or so, maybe Poland.
Yeah, the Polish Institute also is working on something like this, and the German puck that actually levitates that we haven't confirmed yet. I just want to say I don't know if anybody wants to pin this tweet.
That is 100% fake.
So
the one that came out.
Floats, I will ask you because you're new to the space. I will ask you to not throw out 100% because it's not 100%. Some folks that we talk to in the green room, they're not sure whether or not it's 100%. The process seems legit. The process that they describe with like breaking down the big sample to smaller pieces and sorting them. Do you remember the process? Do you remember what I'm talking about? And do you remember the process they outlined better than me? They're sorting it via the mechanism or something, right?
It's looking for things that respond, and there are varieties of way to do this. It's unclear though which of the ones that worked with other superconductors will work with this, just because of the 1D channels.
So, but they do claim that, and again, this is a claim, Floats. It's not confirmed for sure. But however, the folks that I personally asked about this sample, they're not sure either. It does look like one of them cheap Amazon thingies that you buy and just like a electromagnet, levitates on top of the magnet. It does look like that. However, they claim, and again, I will delete my tweet if they claim doesn't materialize. that claim that the process was smashing the samples of LK down to small bits and then using those bits or trying to organize them based on the I don't know, based on levitation ability, and then combining them together into this puck. And this is what they claim they do. And it's a new Twitter account, so it doesn't seem believable. And they're not answering anymore, but we may see something from them. I will say they posted 2 videos of high quality and from 2 angles, and I think it's important to note at least whether or not this is fake or not. If this is not fake, this is the first actual levitating example that we saw in high quality video. That's, I think, is important to note.
So about Institute für Sonderanwendungen, likely from, I mean, the name is in German, so probably
No,
it's
the
from
name
Germany.
gives it away. It's a straight 4chan troll. If you take the name, translate it, it's a reference to like mental retardation. It's like Department of Special. Like this is 100% like a don't say 100%, but this is a complete troll job by 4chan. I don't think we should be falling for this. This is an electromagnet. The behavior is completely different from all the other diamagnetic or superconductive things we've seen. The material keeps going towards the same place. That's not behavior you would expect. It's definitely not pinned because it's spinning around. And again, the name just gives it away. The Germans are trolling us. This is a simple troll.
I hear you, and I love the rigor, and I appreciate it.
I kind of agree. Like it is like the most trollish name possible. I am thinking of whether there is a graduate school of creating trolling names, and so many people graduated from that institute. I mean, but the thing is, Quantum Energy Research Center is also a trolling name. Like you. I mean, it is a mighty strange name, and like this institute is as credible as Q Center to say otherwise. It is extremely suspect. I agree, and the video is not convincing. I mean, it is not supposed to work that way, but I mean.
No,
I don't know. Like
anyone can
yeah.
get. So their process.
One
Anyone can come
one
up with
second,
a
you're
product.
jumping in. I want to hear from Yuri.
I mean, I would say that it's not the name that gets me, because there are lots of companies out there that just sound generic as hell, right? And the thing about the internet is that you could argue that everything here.
Oh, I think we lost Yuri.
It's really about how convincing they are, and they're not convincing enough to us. Because like, I'm not someone who's very confirmed. Like, I could say that Iris isn't confirmed enough for academic levels unless
you're coming
unless
out
she comes forward and doxes herself or something like that, So, like, it's really about just whether they're convincing enough, and they're not. There's just
they're not giving additional information about how they did things. They do say something about how having reprocessed it and packed it or something to that effect, but it's like, well, yeah, sure, if you repack it with a bunch of carbon, then it's the same as floating some graphite over some magnets, and it's just straight diamagnetism.
Okay, so I think at this point we don't have at all consensus. Floats is at 100%. I am not, and I will say the most. Okay, if I'm taking for a fool, and this is a 4chan troll attempt, when Iris first started, people said exactly the same thing. I wasn't sure. There's folks in the audience who actually texted, Iris's profile and said, "Hey, is this a troll? Is this like a trolling attempt?" So I'm no longer like dismissing things just because they seem trolly until I see additional evidence. The evidence I would like to see is the comments the people left on that thread. Iris left a comment asking a question. Some other folks are trying to see whether or not this process of smashing it to bits and combining it to a pack actually works. They said they will release some archive things, so I'm waiting. I'm not entirely dismissing because I think if I'm fooled, that's fine. I'm not claiming that they have what they have. However, let's put aside the German Institute for
Right, wait, hold on. Just one last
one
thing
last thing.
about
Okay.
this group. Like in the video, like you get straight under the magnet. You can basically see the coils that are comprising the electromagnet. If you power an electromagnet, you can
I didn't see
levitate
no coils,
anything
man.
without.
What I saw is a 3D printed casting to hold the magnets, and what I heard from them as an explanation is that this is what they do, and their magnet is like too competing. So I'm still waiting, but I appreciate the excitement about like removing every last piece of kind of information resistance from this.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when more information is forthcoming from them, then, you know, maybe we can look, or we can look at it again. No, maybe there, but based on what they've provided so far, is this just there isn't enough to even consider.
Agree. And they kind of went offline, and so we'll see. There was another person. Also, there's a bunch of fakes. Let's summarize this. We'll not cover all the fakes or the process. We'll focus in the audience. Hopefully, you see some of the process that the group has internally as well. There's a lot of like discussion information. I think Sanghyun summarizes best. There's a fire hose of information. There's like an insane torrent of people trying to replicate, people trying to talk. And to this end, I will say a huge thanks to folks like Floats, folks like Erie, folks like Sanghyun, that like try to cover and bring to you verified and with rigor verified information as it comes out, and it comes out very fast. And so I definitely, this is some insight into how this happens. Sanghyun, you have a comment, go ahead.
Okay, so one thing, Alex just pinned the tweet by Paul Gerhardt on the where to read about the comment of the CGC XGX, but the link is not correct. I will post the correct link after the space is finished.
Okay, remove
Like
it.
so yeah, that's not the link.
Okay, remove the link. And again, verification on the fly. So we did talk about the Polish Institute, and there's we're waiting for some results from Floats. Help me out. I'm blanking out on the
national
Taiwan. Yes,
University.
Taiwan. So the folks who do semiconductors are doing superconductors. That's the line that I wanted to get across. When is this happening, and what are we expected to see? Do we know? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a few posts back, I believe, on the timeline. They have a YouTube live link. They said it's 16:30 Taiwan time. So let me just pull up my page here so we have the
You mean
timeline
today?
conversion. Saturday for them. Yeah, it'll be 1:30 a.m. Pacific, 4:30 a.m. Eastern,
So
and
about
then
4
they
hours
have a
from now.
YouTube.
About
Was
4
it?
hours from now.
Yes, it is 4 hours from now.
Yeah.
So we're expected to see, and it's a live stream. I'm not sure
Well, it's
if
3 hours from now.
3
Right?
hours from now.
3
Yeah.
hours.
It's a YouTube live.
4
It's a
hours.
YouTube live of the baking of the process, but like Andrew, maybe we won't see them actually smashing or levitating. But hopefully, yes. I don't know what the setup is, but definitely this is a confirmed like big corporation with scientists, right? This is not like a pure home attempt. We're watching this very closely as well. I wanna start maybe wrapping up this a little bit. We did all the updates. I want to go around the actually, Eli, I want to ask you this, and we had a few scientists up here before. What needs to be seen in order for us to start like celebrating like crazy? The Roaring Twenties are back. We're so fucking back. It's not even funny. What needs to be seen? So we got replication, right? The paper
Well,
authors.
we haven't actually
Yeah, talk
so
about this, please.
we've got replication of the putative material, the putative superconducting phase, as judged by these unusual responses to applied magnetic fields. Right? We haven't seen other than the 110 Kelvin reproduction, which, and I do want to come back to a comment on that. Any resistivity measurements yet. I'm sure that we're going to see that from Alex's samples pretty soon, and I would expect the same will be true for Iris's. But both of them are dependent on other people to do those for them. They can't do them themselves. So that they're working on it, and I would expect that's sooner rather than later, because I'm sure that everybody wants to know these answers.
So let me maybe present a start, and then you complete. We know that the team is legit, even though in the beginning it didn't seem like it and they were fairly obscure. So now it looks like they at least have the process, and the folks have replicated the process enough to get something out of it. There's something we're still not sure what the properties are, but like the team is not lying, the process is not lying. It's fairly easy to replicate as well. The process is trying to bake a material from lead and copper and some fairly other easily made, easily found materials, which is very exciting. If at the end this does turn to be a superconductor, it's very exciting because current superconductors not only need to be chilled, they're also expensive to make, and it's very exciting. We know that the results were not fabricated necessarily, right? I don't know if all of the papers, graphs, and tests that they had were replicated also, and this is, I think, what remains to be seen. We know we saw levitation, partial levitation, don't matter what. Like we saw this confirmed multiple times in multiple videos yesterday with like 4K from Andrew, right? So we know that like if you add a magnet to the sample based on the process that the Korean team says they have, it levitates. We know this, I think, at this point with certainty. Anybody still doesn't think that we have this? It feels like we have this with certainty. And Eli, here I'm bringing this to your doorstep. We know that the University of Southeast in China, they said that the material that they've baked from this process is in fact superconducting at very low temperature of 110 Kelvin. In my tweet, I said 400 Kelvin, and then I didn't change, but like 110 Kelvin, this material is superconducting, right? This is what came out, and then people said maybe no. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, okay, so I mean, at least in terms of the posters that were shown, it looks like they measured it and it comes out low, with a transition temperature between 110 and 150 Kelvin. And by the way, that does qualify this material as a quote high temperature superconductor. The only question is, what was the quality of their sample, and what is the real critical temperature, right? When you have a good sample. I'm sure they got the critical temperature for the sample they had exactly right. So I mean, honestly, let's say that the whole room temperature ambient pressure thing doesn't bear out. We still have an a new class of ambient pressure quote high temperature superconductor verified, even if it's not room temperature, right? Of course we really want it to be room temperature, but going back to the other question that you asked me about, what do we need to see? Strictly speaking, we don't need to see magnetic susceptibility measurements and heat capacity measurements, because superconductivity is just the how well does it conduct electrons. But those two things that I just mentioned, magnetic susceptibility and heat capacity, are really important for various applications that we would really like a high temperature, like room temperature or higher superconductor for. Like the magnetic susceptibility tells us a lot about how strong a magnetic field can we generate with this, which is immediately important for things like fusion reactors and for other applications where you want to generate a high field. I believe that you could use this stuff as it is for really sensitive magnetic detections, such as SQUIDs, superconducting quantum interference devices, which are the sensors in medical MRIs. Imaging
So
MRIs
Eli,
and other types of
I wanna
MRIs.
circle back on this last point, please. So as it stands, let's say that the University of Southeast and the superconductivity at 110 Kelvin applies to this. Without any further research, without any further advancement, you're saying already at this point, this seems very interesting to those applications, without us going up to room level temperature. This is already like a very
Well, okay, no, we don't have the at least from what I don't have missed it. I very well could have the magnetic susceptibility, and again, that's to tell you the how high a field can you generate with it. But the sensitivity you should probably be able to get for anything that's superconductive.
I mean,
one weird thing
yeah.
about the Southeast University one was, even though they detected the superconducticity, when they had the super chilled sample, it still did not do any sort of levitation, according to them. So, I mean, that was one very weird point, but we'll cling on to a little hope from that one study.
I mean, as already pointed out, it's a new class of superconductor. So that in itself is very interesting. And we don't understand how this new class of superconductor works, and it could take a long time to establish the theory.
Well, so Hyun-Tak Kim, in his interview, he sort of very clearly said that this one-directional superconductivity is sort of strictly inferior to 2D and 3D. So, I mean, my thinking is, like, over the course of the week, the odds of this thing being real have increased significantly. I mean, there were a number of studies which all said it was possible. They didn't have to. They could have said it was a boat of luck, but they all said they were possible. The replications look good, and we had that superconductivity at low temperature thing. But I'm sort of worried that this material sort of becomes the new graphene. If you guys look up what graphene is, it's like this 2D, like one atom thick layer of carbon. If you look up its properties, it's like this miracle thing. You would think that if we had this, like just like us, we're talking about with the superconductor, like all the world's problems would be solved. But it ends up like it's barely used at all. So I'm sort of worried that this will go in that direction. I wonder if
Exactly. Like
okay, so the field, I mean, your characterization is correct, but the extrapolation from it, I would contend, will be shown to I think we're at a transition point. I actually do have stuff in preparation regarding graphene synthesized by a couple of different methods, and the issues with limiting graphene are being able to produce large quantities of it efficiently enough. There are developments, quite independent of anything that I'm working on, that are making that more promising. And so we're entering a new chapter on that, and we're going to see it in not very long.
I want to just sorry, Sunghan, go ahead.
Okay, so our Discord room in Korean has people who worked on graphene and people who worked on carbon nanotube, obviously, and so the LK99 is sort of like graphene and carbon nanotube. So their opinion is that, I mean, at first was greeted a lot of high expectation, but actual practical application fell very short, to say the least. So one of the problem is that they are carbon based, and like I mean, carbon is inconvenient, and it is hard to manufacture at scale, and it is it has a bad material properties. And their opinion is that, I mean, this thing is LK99 is like graphene and carbon nanotube, but with better manufacturing and better material properties, so they are hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly, the concern here. And Eli's addition there was very helpful about the production capabilities of graphene. I feel like they're entirely applicable to LK99. And I mean, this seems like it's going to be a very hard material to produce. Hyun-Tak Kim said, look, so graphene is a 2D sheet. Hyun-Tak Kim characterized this as a 1D string. So, I mean, it seems like it's going to be even harder. And who knows if we can, like, if you have a bunch of LK99 dust, how are you going to combine them? It seems like it's if you just want to weld them together, it's like your first thought, but that might get rid of some of the properties. So, I mean, we'll see for sure.
I mean, so there is an Korean part. So I want to talk about the patent situation.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Quantum Energy Research Center is a business, So they want to profit, and they probably want to establish the factory and produce these things. Like the most likely scenario is that they patent the technology and license it to other companies. So there are lots of patent pending, and so the first patent application to the Korean Patent Office was actually granted in 2022. And they also applied for the international patent, which is now published but not yet granted. And so if you read the patent, I mean, I recommend reading it. It has lots of information that is not available anywhere else. They talk about like as you said, it is an 1D bit of superconducting wire that is randomly interspersed in 3D space, and how do you make it superconducting, and how do you manufacture it? It is a difficult question. And they say that, I mean, we could do the monocrystalline growth, like, I mean, the semiconductor wafer used in the semiconductor manufacturing is actually it is a grown crystal, like its purity is 99.99. I mean, there are 9 nines in there. Maybe, I think it is 12 nines. Anyway, it is a process called Czochralski process, which is very tricky. But I mean, Q Center is thinking about how to do that. They haven't completed the process, but the patent clearly says that they want something like the Czochralski process, and they are claiming that it should be done on the patent.
So I want to just go ahead, Eli.
If I can. So there's this 1D issue. I put a link to you. You do have to sign up for the website, but you can download or you can look at the crystal structure. Download and look at the crystal structure. I give instructions in that thread, and if you do that, you can rotate it, and you see that there are these columns of 6 lead atoms, right? And it is the those columns that represent the one of the possible one-dimensional channels, and then another possible one-dimensional channel, and that's most likely the real one, is the lead and copper in the substitutions atoms that are in the towards the center of that cell. And it's not that it's like isolated carbon nanotubes, but rather if you think of a block where they're all bunched together in a well-ordered stack, right? That would represent the one dimensionality of it. And basically the goal would be to make the grains as large as possible. And so the method that silicon crystals are grown with, where you start with a seed crystal and then grow with it, I think is what they're referring to in that patent.
So I want to talk about applications a little bit, because somebody asked in the audience, the Hyunta Kim seemed to be in a rush to jump into kind of the application phase and not verification phase. And I want to also stress that many of the verifications that we're seeing, trying to even understand, first of all, how to get this big a sample, this big yield, like Phil said, like Quantum Center has, right? They have the biggest examples of all, and they supposedly gave us the process to generate this, and yet it's like we haven't seen replication of the process, and it takes them a while, like Samkyan said. I will mention that like they've been caught off guard by this release, most likely. This is fairly verified at this point. Kwan released the first paper, and then they rushed the second paper out, and then they had to change it a little bit. They even had mistakes within the first paper, so they rushed out. This is, I think, known and understood at this point. And now it looks like some folks in the audience asked, he seems to be starting to talk about application phase. And I think what Sangyan said is very important. Quantum research has patents on this. They are sure of what they have. they have the person that like is experimental in superconductivity. Their process wasn't that great, and Iris showed that as well. So she can faster replicate smaller samples, but they do have some process that yields bigger samples. While the world rushes to replicate, they're potentially moving forward with application because they want to be the people who who kind of profit of the it's a for-profit company, and we're in capitalism. Floats and Eli, we try to stay away from hype as much as possible so far. However, some hype amount is warranted, right? Because at this point, we've seen already videos, we've seen papers come out, we've seen multiple different people replicate, and we see them doubling down on saying that they have what they think they have, and they also, it's not like they came out with this necessarily just now. It's been a process potentially with roots all the way to like USSR, and then some Polish folks. I don't want to go into this whole history. Sanghan, at some point you will tell about this whole history, and the books that Sanghan is getting. Folks, if you want to contribute to the effort, send Sanghan the book. But it's not like they came out with something. They found something. They didn't create it. They found a whole area of exploration that we as a world just need to look at to start on a different process. It may pan out like graphene, like Float said. It does not seem like the folks who are saying this, the claims they make, now that like the authenticity has been proven, it does not seem that this is how they're approaching this area. And I will just add from my other thing, Eli, just 1 second, I'll let you comment on this. I will add from my other thing that we're writing, my other thing being, I'm a host of Thursday AI, and I'm talking about AI and explaining this simply to folks. And we see an insane, I'm using insane twice in the same sentence because I'm as excited about this as that. We're living in an exponential growth stage of capabilities for humanity. Exponential curve, double exponential curve, hardware and software in the race of AI, right? A month ago or a year ago, none of us could have done what we're doing right now because I don't know, everything that Sanghan posted to me, I'm translating with AI, right? I know that Eli, if you want to pick up afterwards, there have been replication attempts, simulation attempts coming out from Sinead Connor from Berkeley and some other folks in China also confirming that they've, without drawing the actual sample, they ran some simulations to give them some examples, and those are problematic so far. However, we know that the exponential curve in AI exists, and we know that like you would be able to simulate more of this. Now that we know where to look, I think it's very important that this is established. We know where to look for this new thing. This is entirely, I would say, true at this point, and this gives me the permission to hype up a little things. We know where to look for new things that we haven't been looked at before, and we are potentially joining another exponential curve, which potentially will solve all the problems of before. And I will conclude on this last thing. It's now incredibly open source collaborative. We have go ahead, Sanghan.
Please. So, I want to moderate on hype because so this is my second time joining the Twitter space, and in the first Twitter space, I insisted on sharing the probability because I really believe in voting for the value but betting for the belief. And on the first space, I stated my probability to be 15%, and many people were confused about it.
Probability of what? It's very important that you say probability of what.
Yeah. So I said the 15%, and that was the probability of we benefiting from the actual application of the room temperature superconductor. Many people confused it to be the probability of replication, but at the first space, I was like 99% sure that it would replicate. Like we had multiple replication already, and I mean, if the floating rock they are holding in the Q center is another genuine article, it is very hard to explain the behavior of the people and the data related so far. But but that is completely different from the new era of humanity, to quote the expression in the 3 or 3rd paper. And Alex also talked about like the exponential increase of the capability of humanity. That is completely different. Like I mean, graphene and carbon nanotube definitely exist, and their physical property is studied in depth, but graphene and carbon nanotube didn't change the world. And it is, I mean, my opinion is that it is currently the most likely situation is that LK99 would fail. I mean, would be disappointing, exactly like the graphene and carbon nanotube was disappointing. So at this point, my probability of the we get the miracle, enter the age of miracle and wonder, and get all the miracles of the room temperature superconductor is like 30%. So my probability doubled between the last space and this space, but 30% is still lower than half. So let's moderate the hype.
Yeah, I have exactly the same position. I mean, the probability that I think that LK99 is like there is some sort of superconductivity is extremely high here, but the practical usefulness has. I've begun to question it sort of more and more, especially with these productivity issues. Especially with, again, everyone should listen to Hyun-Tak Kim's interview today. Like he was definitely stressing like this 1D thing was inferior to 2D and 3D. So the other thing I would like to bring up is, you know, the study that said substituting gold for copper might yield better results. I mean, I think that definitely needs to be studied more. The one weird thing is, like right now, the copper is being delivered via copper phosphate. I'm not sure how you would deliver the gold, but the gold is 4,000 times as expensive as the copper. So even if that was the better solution, this wouldn't be like the total utopia we were probably imagining a week ago, where we could just have this copper and lead solution. I mean, if copper and gold 4,000 times as expensive, I mean, the limitations would be much higher.
Yeah.
I will
Copper and gold.
wait,
Yeah.
one second, please. I want to say hi to Andrew Coate, who's joined a few of our spaces, and premonitiously, I don't know if that's a word, had a tweet storm about potential application of superconductor in room temperature like 3 weeks before this released. Hey Andrew, how are you? How's your evening?
Hey guys, doing good. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to chat. Really like the conversation.
You just joined in the last part of it, I would say, where I started adding a little bit of hype, and some folks are on the other side of it. Not at the other side entirely, but monitoring the hype, moderating the hype. I maybe it's good to ask. Sanghyun just said that your probability is updated from the last space, and the last space was what, a week ago? I want to say maybe a little bit more. Yeah, around a week ago. Andrew, has your probabilities updated in any way, up or down?
Yeah, I'd probably echo some of the sentiments here. My mental model for sort of the unfolding story, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think the engineering practicability of LK99 as a substance is kind of doubtful in that way. But what it seems to be doing is really challenging a lot of theories of superconductivity. So just for context there, theories informing what this phenomenon is have always come out after the fact, after experiments have been performed, and then people are seeking to explain it in hindsight. So we've never really had a predictive theory of superconductivity. And, there's been a lot of contentions in the theory space about how to best explain this phenomenon. I know for sure the sort of classic theory called DCS, I'm pretty sure kind of fails to really explain superconductivity that occurs in higher temperatures. I'm actually I'm going to read up on this myself and try to educate others too, just kind of what the competing theories are and where they differ. But I think at the very least, whether LK99 kind of has all these effects at once, I think it's definitely challenging a lot of long-held theories on the material science aspect, on the kind of basic physics front. There was a paper out of University of Boulder, Colorado, which was really interesting because, just in broad outlines, what they were saying was you know, the superconductivity might not really be from what we normally think of as these phonon electron interactions, or basically electrons interacting with vibrations in the crystal. But what might instead is almost simpler to understand in a way is that the orbitals of electrons, meaning like where they most likely to be, are overlapping. They specifically mentioned the overlap of the copper and the oxygen, and then there was another publication finding diamagnetism in an LK99 replicant sample in a Chinese university, and they also suggested the copper-oxygen interaction as being key to that. So I think you know, sort of, it's much broader conversation now, right? Than just this one formulation, and it's a much sort of much more promising or fruitful kind of line of inquiry that can be opened up in the near term. And I think that's what I'm really most optimistic about is that it's, hey, look, here's this really interesting new search space to be exploring, because previously we've been really exploring very specific kind of search spaces based on our theory that had been used to explain past results. So that's kind of where I'm at, I guess, at the moment.
Is that
Andrew,
fair
can I-
to follow up? One second, folks. Is that fair to follow up with a question here that I think I saw this somewhere, but please folks on the stage tell me now, that BCS, this theory, based on whether or not your superconductor kind of process in a paper applied to that or not. I think paper were rejected based on it. I don't know if this is fair assessment, but like Andrew, is this fair to say that like this whole theory of BCS in the area of superconductors of the past, now we have like a new area to explore in, and potentially it's hard to start application, but like it's definitely underexplored because it's fairly new and definitely goes against the conventional wisdom that we've currently had so far. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, I think it's you know, it's not all of one or the other. I think BCS might be a great theory to explain these properties in a certain class of compounds, in a certain range of temperatures and pressures and so forth. You know, just by analogy, right? You go to the Wikipedia article on theories of lift, right? Like how do airplanes fly? There's more than one, right? It's kind of funny. There's more than one proposed mechanism that's at work that generates lift on an airplane wing. And it's kind of hilarious because we thought that's a really nailed down topic. But I think in a similar fashion, what we call superconductivity in materials may actually exist or manifest through different mechanisms as you change the crystal structure, as you change the operating conditions. Just like, you know, a jet fighter does not have wings shaped like what we think of as the airplane wing with the round top and the flat bottom, right? It's completely different. It looks like a flat piece of metal, but it generates lift by just deflecting air down at such a high speed. It's just this change in momentum. So more than one way to make an airplane fly, and perhaps, I mean, I don't want to overstate the case, but there may be more than one way to get these properties we think of as superconductivity too.
Yeah, I would like to ask Andrew, like when you talk about this whole new space of exploration that we should be doing in science, like how like what methods are there to do it? Because like these guys were just sort of mixing rocks, sort of alchemy style. I know a whole bunch of other people were previously doing some theoretical physics type stuff. Some other people are doing computational simulations. Like when we're talking about exploring the LK99 adjacent space, like what do you think is like the most efficient way to go around exploring this space?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I have lots of thoughts on that that I'm not, I guess, confident enough to share publicly, but it's something I've been thinking about quite a lot recently. You know, I can just reason by example. So with the YCBO, which is yttrium, barium, copper oxide, also called cuprates, that was the Nobel Prize in 1986, right? So the very first discovery of that, the first lab to do it, I believe they had a material that I forget, it couldn't withstand very high magnetic fields, and another lab sort of improved upon the formulation quite quickly, and then over time there's been slight modifications and slight adjustments, and it's really, you know, you're really like tuning the recipe, right? Like you bake the cake the first time, and what's the moisture and the flavor and the fluffiness and this kind of stuff, And then you can get better at that over time. So I think in the adjacent space, it's really like the paper talking about replacing copper with gold or other atoms, right? It's kind of like that's one way to think about it. And then the question becomes, okay, well then how do you synthesize that material, right? And there may be other ways also of growing and synthesizing that crystal, right? Like there's more than one way to develop that material. So yeah, it's one of these things where the theory and the experiment are kind of two sides of the scissors, and it's like, well, which side of the scissors does the cutting? And when it comes to cutting edge research, it's really, you know, both of them have to do the cutting together, and that's actually how you make progress.
We're coming up on the 2-hour space, and I promised some folks here that we'll conclude in 2 hours. So I will say, and Andrew, apologize, you just joined, but like we're wrapping up. However, I want to say, maybe go around the speakers. Maybe Andrew and Eli pick this up first. Is what do we need to see to start thinking that the hype is warranted? Obviously, Twitter hypes up everything, and then the expectations fall. So, like, you know, there's there's an exponential curve of hype as well, and memes, and sometimes it does crash, like graphene, etc. What do we need to see to actually kind of believe Hyun Kim that what they have is that what they actually have, and it applies to, you know, superconductors just in room temperature? What else do we need?
So first of all, good resistivity measurements that show at least, you know, something well below copper. But if it's not, you know, in the real superconductivity range, then with that, some you know, microscopy images of the morphology that explain why it's not, you know, on a macroscopic scale at that level. And this goes back to the very first preprint where their resistivity measurements were really low, but they weren't quite in the defined range that would qualify as a superconductor, and they explained it as possibly grain boundaries, which I find highly, you know, credible explanation for that. So you know, at least good resistance measurements that are really low, or, you know, some you know, additional information to explain why they aren't quite really low, even though it's showing other properties. But also, you know, we don't know for certain what the elemental composition of the superconducting phase is. We know what reactants went in. We believe we have an idea of the crystal structure and what's in it, but until you get the direct measurement of the authentic superconducting phase, you don't know for certain. So I should really just back up and say we need a lot more and more hard measurements of a variety of types.
Andrew, how about you? What else are you looking for? What else are you waiting for from the scientists? Andrew, just one sec before, because I forgot. I also pinned an live attempt from the Department of Condensed Matter, CondMat, I think, and they're also baking this as we speak as well. And I think they had a lot of doubt in the beginning, unless I'm mistaken. And so it's great to see them also trying to replicate. So Andrew, how about you? What are you also watching out for? What's worth watching out for, and what's a development that we're starting to get that's going to start justifying some of the hype?
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. I mean, I think scientists are rightfully cautious about stoking too much hype in public sentiment, because the public is not always so forgiving when the results come back that are mixed, right? That aren't just a clear slam dunk. I think public imagination and the news cycle often doesn't have as much patience and qualification as required to really appreciate scientific progress. So I think it's reasonable to temper expectations a little bit there. On the other hand, I think if my sort of intuition at this point is correct, which is that this does point towards some interesting new theories that are worth exploring in terms of solid state physics, in terms of condensed matter, and that these theories could help greatly inform the search for new materials in similar crystal structures of similar materials, or perhaps in different ones altogether, but that are just informed with the same theoretical basis, then I think the hype is kind of justified, honestly, already. I mean, even if LK99 isn't the sample we think it is, even if it, you know, if it doesn't meet all of our conditions for superconductivity, but it shows really interesting massive drops in resistance at high temperatures and so forth. If it acts as a fruitful starting point for future investigations, and those investigations have the possibility to lead to successful samples and successful materials, then yeah, I think we're kind of there. But that's, again, more with the long-term perspective that science is a really diligent, methodical enterprise that takes decades and generations and involves a lot of implicit hands-on knowledge. And so
I
yeah.
have a comment on this last bit. Just the events that unfolded for the past week and a half, the amount of collaboration in the open source of science, the fact that, you know, people are saying, well, see, peer review is this process that, you know, would have paused it, and if Juan didn't release the paper, maybe he wouldn't have kickstarted like multiple labs across locations, across language barriers, collaborating together and trying to find this out. I want to believe the potential of human collaboration, remove language barriers, and the ability to collaborate in real time. And science, as it has been done so far, had a lot of like gravity placed on authority and a lot of like process, underlining a lot of the stuff how they should be done. And I think the events of the last week, if they spoke to something, is that, you know, the internet can come together and nip the shit out of something until, you know, a cat person in Russia that nobody believes starts talking to like physicists in Finland. And I think we have some people in Israel in the group chat as well. And they start collaborating and moving faster and faster. And this adds to, you know, other exponential curves. So, you know, previous speed may not represent the next speed is what I'm trying to say, but the rest of what you said, Andrew, I completely agree. I hope I didn't like.
Okay. Can I say something?
Add
one
last
sec,
thought, and then
Andrew, and then Sanghan.
Just one last quick couple sentences. I think in general, things that can get the public really interested in science as if it, for what it really is, which is a collaboration, but also competition that can change the world. I mean, you know, millions of people tune into the Super Bowl, and, you know, Super Bowl is exciting. We all love our teams, whatever. But they're, you know, the Super Bowl happens every year, and some team win and some team lose. Having as much excitement and public opinion, you know, people on the edge of their seat with these unfolding, breaking discoveries, I think that's awesome. And I think our culture needs more of that in general. So I think I'm hopeful that people are appreciating big impacts can come from small discoveries, and science is a very egalitarian process in that sense.
Go ahead, Sanghan.
Okay. Again, I want to moderate a hype bit. Like, in our group, I'm like the most optimistic person in the room, and the most optimistic person in the Korean group chat room is at 30%, and other people are more pessimistic. And we talked about how this is a new class of superconductor, and it is actually confirmed to be superconducting in not a room temperature, but in 110 Kelvin. But there are lots of classes of superconductor, and this new class of superconductor may be inferior in every way to already known superconductors, like the rare earth cuprate superconductors. And if you listen to the Hyuntak Kim's interview by the South Korean popular science YouTuber, Hyuntak Kim is very clear that 1D superconductor is inferior in many ways compared to 2D and 3D superconductor. So it is a trade-off. Why it works, if it works in room temperature, why it works is because it trades off the good material properties of superconductor against working at the room temperature. So it is not enough for the LK99 to work in, let's say, liquid nitrogen temperature. It really needs to work at the room temperature to be worth it. And so the thing is, so it is inferior in every way compared to superconductor we already have, except for the two things that it is cheap because it is made of lead and copper, and the another part is that it maybe or may not works in the room temperature. So it is really important that it actually works in room temperature. And another thing is that it has good material property to make, say, wires, and that part is really important. I mean, it could fail like the graphene and carbon nanotube. So let's temper down hype a bit. Like, it is mighty strange to be a skeptic here because I'm the most optimistic person in my group. Like, okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Sangha, this is great. I just want to say this is great, and I think the cautious approach also makes sense for a lot of people, given the outcome potential. Like everybody needs to like temper a little bit for sure. And yeah, whoever wants to unmute and go next and tell us about what they need to see to start.
I'll say two things real fast. So the first is on the technical side. I think things have gotten a lot better this week. We've gotten nothing but good news this week. Again, all the simulations came out on the side of LK99, so that was good. And then we had the replications, of course, and then we had the paper on the superconductivity at low temperature. So that was all good. But I do have one worry, is that like I never approached this LK99 is it real issue like from examining the technical details. My theory coming in was always like, were these people telling the truth? Is like, because if the things they were telling, if the things that were written in the paper were true, then it is a superconductor, right? So I was just doing a probability of whether or not these people were lying or not. And initially, it seemed like they had definitely no reason to lie. Their behavior this week seems a little suspect, I would say. So although the aspects, again, everything looked good, behaviorally, the refusal to provide the sample to the MIT group, the verification committee, of course.
Wait, that's not verified. Hold up. I saw multiple folks retweet this, and I verified with Jesus, who was in our spaces, and there was no refusal with MIT. And MIT didn't, as far as we've seen on the internet at least, and Jesus was in charge of this. I DM'd him specifically. I saw TypesFest, the guy, I forgot his name, Ryan something from Ship. I'm very bad with names, but he boosted this idea, and I verified with Jesus, who works in MIT, and he was in charge of like this rumor. So I want to like make this one
all right,
clear.
fantastic.
There was an MML international conference in Korea. Potentially, this was the reason why Kwon kind of released this, because he eventually got to speak there a week after the release, and he presented the materials, and he's no longer affiliated with Q Center. We know this, right? So like Kwon is like a rogue person, and we don't know what led to his release. We only know like the official stuff. There is an interview with him somehow. I don't know if you have a link to that, but if folks are interested, I think Kwon also released I think MIT folks were there for the conference. They didn't kind of get an invite and then didn't get a sample. They were there for the conference, and as far as we know, they just tried to get a sample and didn't succeed. There was no refusal, and kind of the meme started with Jesus and moved forward with like they refused MIT scientists to get a sample.
All right, I understand. All right, great news. But just the last thing, and then I'll pass it on, is that the statement that the Q Center, they were broke and they had loans and they needed money, that was also like, okay, now if I understand correctly, that the group was sort of short on money, the probability that they would try something sort of goes up. So again, mixed week. Technical is good. Behaviorally, a little suspect, I would say. So
I'm not a scientist, but I want to react to many of the stuff that you're saying as the way I see them, because I also looked at the human element. This is why I try to underline. This is why Atapai, Sangyan, like all of us try to like figure out who are the working people, who is the human element behind this, and this is why we. And Andrew, I think you had a chat about H scores and over indexing with them, with Robert as well. This is why we like the H score of Hyun Kim. He's still standing behind this. However, it seemed that like what you're implying, not you're implying, sorry, the implication here is if they are, there's something shady, something sus, like you said. The implication is they're doing this on purpose and it's all a sham. And it does not seem like these people are capable of this. I don't think anybody in Q Center understands virality and meme nature of Twitter. And I don't think that I think they just got caught by surprise completely with the
Oh yeah,
release.
no, I
And this is
100%
all
agree.
reactionary. And if it's all reactionary, however, the credentials are there for them, and the credentials definitely there for Hyun-Tak Kim. And now he's like taking the public stance that, hey, the paper release wasn't agreed by all the authors. However, the science is solid. This is the stance he's taking. I don't think that like anything we see is on purpose. I do want to hear from Sunghyun and then from Atapai, who just joined us and hopefully has a story for us as well.
So I haven't completed the verification of this story, but our current understanding of the situation with MIT's sample request and is that, as you said, that MIT people were not specifically in Korea for this. There was a MML 2023 conference anyway, and they were attending the conference. And this conference happened to be in the Korea University. And one of the author of the three authors paper, Kwon, so affiliation is a Korea University, and everyone attending said to the organizer, it is absurd that some people from Korean University did the world-changing, breaking research, and we are at Korea University and we cannot hear about it. So they contacted Kwon, and Kwon came to the conference and presented, and he had one sample material at hand, and someone asked for the can we get this sample and measure it properly, and Kwon refused, and Kwon, after that, he interviewed about why he refused, because as we already know, he left the company 4 months ago, but he had a sample because Kwon is listed together in the patent, and he was an important insider and collaborator for a long time. So maybe he just took a sample, or whether it was authorized by the Q Center, or I don't know what, but he has the sample. But that is the only sample, and he wants to keep that sample, so he couldn't share it to MIT. This part is very understandable.
So I want to say hi to Atapai. Atapai started with a fairly small account, started telling the story, and then grew very quickly. And he is focusing together with Sungkyun. I tend to try to help, I think, on the human kind of story of all of this. Atapai, what do you got for us? Where are you in terms of hype personally?
I kind of as you know, I speculate based on facts, right? So I'm not I find myself like not holding on to the facts that tightly. Instead, I kind of float above the facts and try to place them in what would make sense in context. So my read is not that it's sus. My read is J.H. Kim is the only one who hasn't given an interview at this point. All these other guys are posturing. J.H. Kim is not out, right? He's working hard. What is he working on? And my guess is they know that this is the beginning of this kind of one-dimensional superconductors. They know that there are better ones, and they are searching for them. And so then it becomes clear, like what they're doing right now is that they're happy to put the paper out, but they don't want to like get everyone in the world like super fast. They still need to create a little bit of a competitive advantage, a little bit of a moat. So they're creating that kind of distance. They're not interested in like they're done with the verification. Like basically they're living 3 years in the future, right? So their concerns are not our concerns. Their concerns are living 3 years in the future. If you had like Apple stock, if you knew Apple stock price 3 years in the future, what would you do? That is the question that they are facing. They don't have the same concerns that we do. We're like, oh my God, is it real? They're like, dude, it's been real for me for 3 years. Can you forget about it? I'm not interested in helping you figure out if it's real, man. Like you guys,
or 24 years.
yeah. So I've already put the marker in. I've put the paper out to Arxiv. Do your own research. Do not bother me anymore. My concerns are making money.
And application and patenting and selling this to the, you know, in case this replicates like they say it replicates, you know, doing a lot of stuff with it. 85, thank you. That's a great comment. I think,
yeah, it helps that they have like a patent on the entire periodic table. If you take a look at the patent, they have like how many combinations of elements do they get under this patent? I'm not sure which patent office approved this, but they really got a windfall there.
all right, folks, I think at this point, looks like we lost Andrew. I don't know if Andrew, you dropped because of connection or you just said goodbye silently. At this point, we've been at this for 2 hours and 20 minutes. I promised Eli that we'll wrap after 2 hours. Some other folks gave us this comments as well that, you know, these tend to drone on too long and sometimes at the end we get loose. So I just want to finish on several things. I want to talk about, first of all, folks on stage without whom it was, you know, impossible for me to stay up to date. And we all kind of try to present you the best informations as we have them. And it now starts to have like an international room of collaboration within scientists and people who are excited and storytellers. And I absolutely love this. So I want to say thanks to Sanghyun and Floats and Atapai and Eli and Andrew, who's here, Andrew, the other Andrew, the Space Cowboy Andrew, Iris and Nelke. I want to say thanks to all of these folks who just join and kind of collaborate together. And I want to thank all of you to also letting me host these spaces, because obviously not a scientist, definitely a hype guy, definitely a hype guy, but obviously not a scientist. And so I thank Sanghyun for like chilling the room a little bit, moderating the hype as well. However, I do feel personally that some amount of hype is warranted always. I believe in humanity, I believe in potential, I believe in exponential improvement, and I see all of these things, including here. So if this is a new area of exploration and that's it, I think that's already incredible. If this is like what Andrew just said and Eli,
and I want to do the public service announcement. Like, I think betting on the uncertainty is really important, and the humanity should use the prediction market much more than it currently does. So there is a manifold market. And the current market is at 38%. I mean, I said my probability was 30%, and it was 30% yesterday. And although I try very hard not to be affected